Hello! Welcome to English for Everyone, where we practice real-life American English. Today we're going to learn some important phrasal verbs and vocabulary, so let's get started. First, let's look at the difference between wind down and unwind. They can both be used to express the same idea. To relax at the end of the day.
In the constant rat race of life, don't ever forget to unwind.
Until then, just relax and unwind.
They deserve to unwind and get drunk.
I just figured we'd come up here and unwind a little bit before we go down.
Should go and unwind.
Lay around, we're gonna drink wine. But first, on the docket, unpack and unwind for 20 minutes.
I think I know somewhere warm we can go unwind.
I like to come up here a lot at the end of the semester to unwind.
Example, I can say, he listens to relaxing music to unwind at the end of the day. And I can say the same with wind down. He listens to relaxing music to wind down at the end of the day. I prefer unwind. I think it's more common, but you can use both. Let's practice. Does he listen to relaxing music to unwind at the end of the day? That's right. He listens to relaxing music to unwind at the end of the day. Example, your body needs time to wind down and prepare for a good night's sleep. Let's practice. Does your body need time to wind down and prepare for a good night's sleep? That's right. Your body needs time to wind down and prepare for a good night's sleep.
So when his ring work began to wind down, he tried his hand at another career.
Hogan, just to sort of wind down.
I just can't seem to wind down.
We wind down before dawn and sleep.
You know, you really gotta wind down.
Frank, the Cardinals just refuse to go quietly into the desert night as their seemingly interminable season winds down.
But wind down can be used a little differently. Wind down can be used to describe anything that ends gradually, with less activity and less energy. For example, a storm. A storm can end gradually with less activity and less energy. The storm can wind down. Example, the storm started to wind down after 4 hours of heavy rain. Let's practice. Did the storm start to wind down after 4 hours of heavy rain? That's right. The storm started to wind down after 4 hours of heavy rain. It gradually started to decrease in activity and energy. It started to wind down. So we have the phrasal verb, wind down. So we also have the phrasal verb, wind up. And what does it mean? It's like the opposite. You're talking about something full of energy. It comes from this. This is a wind-up toy. So you wind up the wind-up toy, and then what happens? It's full of energy. It's going really fast. It's wound up. So, wind in the present, wound in the past, and wound is the participle. We use the participle as an adjective, and we say the toy is wound up. And we can say this about people too when they're full of energy. So, pronunciation, wound up. Use the ow sound like out and about, wound. This is our adjective.
Got Bobby all wound up and ready to go, sir.
Tom gets all wound up, talks big, and then he usually backs down.
Don't get all wound up, all right?
I'm not, I'm just saying.
So they had a thing in the old days called the Salem witch hunt, where people got all wound up before they knew what the facts were.
Last time I saw you, you looked kind of wound up.
Easy, baby, you're all wound up.
Example, the kids were all wound up after the party. Because the party made them so excited, they still had all this energy and they were running around and jumping around the house. They were all wound up after the party. Let's practice. Were the kids all wound up after the party? That's right. The kids were all wound up after the party. They needed time to wind down. Maybe it took 30 minutes or an hour for the kids to wind down after the party, to gradually decrease their energy level. That's wind down. But I don't say it took the kids 30 minutes to unwind after the party. So what's the difference? We use unwind after hard work. You need time to relax after hard work. That's unwind. We can't use it in this case. It's wind down is to decrease in energy. The kids needed 30 minutes to an hour to wind down after the party, to decrease their energy level. Let's practice. Did the kids need like 30 minutes or an hour to wind down after the party? That's right, they needed 30 minutes to an hour to wind down after the party. So unwind is used more for after a hard day's work. You need time to relax, primarily to relax. I need an hour to unwind after a hard day's work. What about you? How much time do you need to unwind after a hard day's work? Very good. Keep watching to learn another meaning of wind up and other similar confusing words. The word is not pronounced wound. The word is pronounced wound. This is a wound. Use the long oo sound like food and moon. Woo. Wound. This is a wound. It's countable, so I have to say for one. This is a wound. It's like a sore, but it's different. How is it different? The difference is a sore is smaller. A wound is bigger or more serious. So this is larger and more serious. I don't call it a sore, I call it a wound. I can describe it and say, this is a gunshot wound, because it came from a gun. This is a gunshot wound. Or I can say, this is a bullet wound, because it came from a bullet. They're both the same. This is a gunshot wound, or this is a bullet wound. Let's practice. Is this a gunshot wound? That's right, this is a gunshot wound. Is this a bullet wound? That's right, this is a bullet wound. And I can change wound with ed. I can say wounded. Wounded is an adjective to describe somebody. I can say he is wounded. Or in the past, he was wounded. What about this guy? Yeah, he was wounded. Ouch. Looks like it hurts. So I can say he is wounded. I can say in the past, he was wounded. Let's practice in the present. Is he wounded? That's right, he is definitely wounded. Or in the past, was he wounded? That's right, he was wounded. And by the way, the thing is called an arrow. It comes from a bow and arrow. This is a bow and arrow. Pronunciation, this is a bow and arrow. Bow and arrow. We don't say and, we say n. Bow and. This is a bow and arrow. So he was wounded by the arrow. Or I can talk about soldiers. Wounded soldiers. I can put wounded before soldiers because it's an adjective. I can put the adjective before the noun. This is a wounded soldier. And he was wounded in battle. Let's practice. Is he a wounded soldier? That's right, he's a wounded soldier. Was he wounded in battle? That's right, he was wounded in battle. I hope he gets better. So, what is wound? Is wound even a word? Yes, it is. Wound is spelled exactly the same, but it's pronounced differently. And it's the past of wind. In the present, wind. In the past, wound. We hear the pronunciation with the long I for the present verb. Why? Wind. Wind in the present and wound in the past. I know what you're thinking. What about this? This is wind. It's spelled the same, but it's a different idea, and it's pronounced differently. This is wind. And if I describe it, I can say it's windy outside. So these two words are wind and windy. Now let's talk about wind and wound. They're verbs. What do they mean? It means when you go like this. That's wind. For example, you can wind the string around your finger. Actually, I think it's yarn, but we'll say string. You can wind the string around your finger. In the past, she wound. She wound the string around her finger. Let's practice. Can you wind the string around your finger? That's right, you can wind the string around your finger. Let's practice in past. Did she wind the string around her finger? That's right, she wound the string around her finger. Now we hear the pronunciation ow, like around, about, out, wound. She wound the string around her finger. That's the past of wind. I can also add up and make a phrasal verb, wind up. In the past, wound up. Example, you can wind up the hose. In the continuous form, winding. What is she doing? She's winding up the hose. Let's practice. What is she doing? Is she winding up the hose? That's right, she's winding up the hose. Or in the past, wound. She wound up the hose. Let's practice. Did she wind up the hose? That's right, she wound up the hose. I can also describe the hose and say, the hose is wound up. Let's practice. Is the hose wound up? That's right, the hose is wound up. And we can use the phrasal verb wind up, in the past wound up, to mean something completely different. We can say it to mean end up. That means to say what happens in the end. Example, he's a robber and he robs people, and if he keeps robbing people, he will end up in jail. So I can use the phrasal verb wind up. If he keeps robbing people, he will wind up in jail. That's what will happen at the end. He will wind up in jail. Let's practice. What will happen if he keeps robbing people? Will he wind up in jail? That's right. If he keeps robbing people, he will wind up in jail. He needs to stop robbing people. I can also use wind up and wound up with a gerund. If I put a verb after this, I have to use a gerund. So example, he kept robbing people, so he wound up getting arrested. Get arrested, I changed to a gerund, getting. He wound up getting arrested. That's what happened at the end. He wound up getting arrested. Let's practice. Did he wind up getting arrested? That's right, he wound up getting arrested. And I can say, he wound up in jail. Just like we predicted. We said if he keeps robbing people, he will wind up in jail. And now, in the past, he wound up in jail. Let's practice. Did he wind up in jail? That's right, he wound up in jail. That's where the story ended. So I can say he ended up in jail or he wound up in jail. It's the same idea. Also, we have these words. Rewind, in the past, rewound. These words are not very common anymore because we don't use tapes and cassettes and videotapes. But when we did, we used this word a lot. You rewind a videotape, you rewind a cassette. In the past, rewound. He rewound the cassette. Thank you for watching. And if you want to improve your pronunciation and avoid mistakes in English, subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.